Can everyone at home hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Host? I am.
All right, class is in session.
Class is in session, okay. Take two, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2023, where tech issues still persist. So today we're going to talk about the changes to the RPA. And guess what, guys? Really simple, not nearly as much as last year. Hey, guys, in the classroom, conversation afterwards, please. Thank you. So not nearly as many changes as last year, okay? So very, very simple changes. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna pull up the document that goes over all of the RPA changes. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna go open those documents. I'm gonna share my screen. I don't need this page. Here we go. All right, can everyone at home see the RPA changes?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we can.
So, paragraph 3E, don't worry about not knowing what that is. It says it changed 3E 1 and 2, changed language so there is no default for points. Can anyone take a guess at what a point is? It's not something we deal with, it's something to do with the lender.
Interest rate.
Yeah, a point is something, a fee that a buyer can pay to their lender for certain reasons, including buying down their interest rate. There used to be a default not to exceed 1 point. Really, that is not up to us as agents, nor do we care. I always leave that section in the RPA blank. So do we care about this change? We do not, because that is a private agreement between buyer and lender, and that can change actually during your escrow. So there's no reason for me to identify how many points a buyer is paying or not paying to their lender, okay? Section 3G3, new optional paragraph for buyer to use to ask for seller to pay for buyer's broker. Again, this is not something very common, but this is very helpful. This section is in relation to a property that is not publicly listed on the MLS with a listing agreement, where there is no binding agreement between the listing broker and the seller as to what the cooperating buyer's agent / broker is going to make. So when would this be helpful, guys? Any guesses? When I'm writing an offer on an off-market property, something that doesn't have a listing agreement. But you know what? This paragraph only solidifies what you're being paid, right? Because if I'm a good agent and I'm showing my buyer a property, I want to see either a listing agreement between the listing agent and seller, but if they don't have one, which is commonly the case, that is not actually a pocket listing then, guys. What does that listing agent have with the seller? They have a listing lead, and they're using me and my buyer as bait to get representation of the seller. What document do I want to use before I even introduce my buyer to this property? Because if my buyer wants this property, certainly I'm not going to wait until the RPA to contractually bind someone to pay me. Close? Single party, yes, single party. I am not showing a fucking property to my buyer unless I have evidence of a signed listing agreement that shows how much I get paid, or the sellers was willing to sign a single party agreement identifying how they're going to pay me. Or perhaps it's clear that the seller is not willing to pay the buyer's agent. In that case, what do I need to get? I need to get a single party with my buyer agreeing to pay me. Okay, so this paragraph is useful just to solidify that payment to you but it should already have been arranged in documentation using the single party agreement, however that got worked out. Do not show property to your buyers unless that seller or buyer has agreed to pay you. And it's not common for your buyer to be the one paying.
Christina,
Yes.
this is all because it's not in the MLS, because in the MLS, we don't.
If it's in the MLS, on the MLS, it says how much money is being offered to the cooperating broker. It's on the right-hand side. And it usually ranges between 2 to 3%, most common being 2.5. All right, paragraph 3M3, and don't worry, we'll look at these in the RPA, okay? Refers to units occupied by persons other than the seller. Oh, are you fucking joking?
Want me to get briefing?
No, I think I can recast myself. I think I got this one. Yay! All right. Back to, those of you at home still see my RPA changes notes, correct?
Yeah.
All right, move this fucking box. Oh my God. All right. And you guys still see me as I move it, right? It's moving up and down for you. Not you in the classroom, those at home.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. All right, refers to 3M3, refers to units occupied by persons other than the seller. What does this mean? It means any property that has a tenant in place during an escrow, right? Or at the time you make an offer. Last column contains advisory to seller to add TOPA, T-O-P-A. Right? TOPA is an acronym for a zip form that is to be used anytime you are selling a property that has a tenant in possession of the property, whether or not the property will be delivered vacant. That is one of the items that is covered in TOPA. Okay. In a counter offer, if tenant or other occupant and buyer did not check box to add the form. So it's just a reminder, right? It's a reminder. Paragraph 7A, new language provides that the unit buyer intends to occupy to be vacant at the time of possession. So let's say so the TOPA covers one thing, right? But the contract, right? If a buyer is purchasing a property that they intend to live in, and there's a tenant in place, well, we need it to say in the contract very clearly that seller is to deliver possession of the property, right? Vacant. So that's what this is referring to. Buyer to identify which unit, if more than one. Well, this is dumb. This is dumb because we don't use an RPA for units. What purchase agreement do we use? RPA, Residential Income Purchase Agreement. Okay. However, people make mistakes all the time, and because the state realizes that a lot of people accidentally use a regular RPA purchase agreement on a multifamily purchase,
What's the name of it again?
RPA, Residential Income Purchase Agreement. Anytime you have anything that has more than one unit, you are not using RPA, you are using RPA. In fact, when I sell income property and I get an RPA, I instantaneously tell that agent, I'm sorry, you'll need to submit your offer on the correct purchase agreement, because I'm not going to sit there and clean up all of the shit about vacancy and what unit and all of that. Okay, but in any case, I'm sure that this got changed on RPA also, but it's a good reminder and something, a good learning lesson for us all, is that there could be some discrepancy between the buyer and seller as to which units will be delivered vacant. Okay, so this is identifying which unit, if there's going to be more than one, because let's say I'm a buyer and I'm buying a triplex. Unit B is vacant, but I want to live in unit A, and the seller has agreed to make sure that unit A is vacant for me. I want to make sure that at the time my purchase closes, both A and B are vacant. Does that make sense? Why is that so important?
Because the other unit might have a tenant.
Yeah, if the tenant's not gone, good luck getting rid of them in the city of Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, all of LA County right now, while we have our lovely mayor in office.
Is that a good one, the mayor?
Well, I mean, not if you own income property,
Not at
because
all.
we're still in a state of emergency. No rental increases, no fault evictions. And guess what? That includes month to month on anything that is what? Rent control. And what qualifies as rent control, guys?
Multi-units.
Multi-units built prior to 1978. And there's more protections than that, like just good luck getting rid of anyone. You do not risk that chance as a buyer.
After that time, we can do something or we still
That's
can-
a really complicated,
Yeah. that's the thing,
in
we
certain
can-
instances with relocation fees and a lot of paperwork and time. Yeah. Not an easy,
And also the month to month, we cannot get rid.
No.
No.
no, month to month doesn't matter if they're rent control. If they're rent control, they can stay there as long as they want to, unless the seller does something called a no fault eviction. You can't just get rid of them because you want to get rid of them. You have to be moving into it yourself or one of your immediate family members. There are a couple of other weird instances, and you have to pay that tenant relocation costs. Was there a question?
I got 3 questions. First of all, condo is not part of the rent control.
Single family and condo do not apply. Nope.
So that's one thing. Another thing is that when you talk about RPA, the income property, that's for any multi-unit more than 4.
No.
units.
That is 2 or more.
2.
Mhm.
It was always 2 and more?
Yep.
I thought it was 4 and more.
Nope.
Okay, so it's 2 and more.
4 is still considered residential. 2 to 4 is residential and subject to residential real estate law. 5 or more is not subject to residential lending or real estate law. It's different. That's called commercial. And while we may be able to handle less complex multifamily sales over 4 units, really, unless you know how to operate as a commercial agent and have the tools available to provide your client, you're not doing them the service of providing commercial representation when you are not equipped to do so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if I list the 2 units, I still have to have the buyer agents to submit RPA.
Yes, and I believe there's even a residential income listing contract.
I
Yeah,
did not know that. And last thing is that I thought in 1978 got changed. to
No.
not yet. Okay.
no,
Thanks.
yes. We need to stay on topic, so let's hear your question.
Okay, after.
Yeah. On topic, guys. I cannot get through class if we talk about all of these other things.
Yeah.
All right. Paragraph 9B2, window coverings include hardware and rods. So we're talking about inclusions and exclusions here. And by legal definition, what is included in a property?
Things that are attached.
Permanently affixed. By legal definition, anything permanently affixed. That means a TV bracket amount, but not the television.
Yeah.
That means a light fixture. Okay, well, people get really confused with curtains, blinds, rods. What's hardware? What's not, right? Common sense would say, oh, curtains are not permanently affixed, but the curtain rod is. Even with this change, who cares? We have an inclusions and exclusions portion where we can type in anything we want. So when in doubt, even when not in doubt, we all know my stupid little Murphy bed lesson that I've talked to you guys about, right? I'm not going to digress there, but when in doubt, make it very, very clear. Just make it clear under inclusions and exclusions. If it doesn't say that in that section for you to check, or even if it says something, but you want to elaborate on it, do it. It does not hurt to be repetitive. The only time it hurts is when there is confusion, vagueness, something's not included. Agents end up buying presents for their clients when you're not clear. Okay. All right. Paragraph 11M, new paragraph requires seller to give buyer known information about any solar system. new form solar may be used. I have not looked at this, but this is great. Why? Because we know there are solar panels and other items that can be leased or liened or owned. Okay, but we do know that we need information, okay, about what's going on with it, because contracts, costs, things like that, transferability. You know, we need to know first off if the solar panels are not owned, if they can be transferred to the new owner, the buyer, at all. And if so, under what terms? Because the buyer needs to know what those terms are in order to properly agree. How can I agree to purchase something when there's a term that's undefined? And a lot of agents are not familiar with this type of thing. And so it becomes a problem to be negotiated later when there's, you know, maybe the buyers looked at all of their contingencies. Now we have new disclosure about solar. Does that open investigation contingency up for buyer to cancel? Yeah, yes, it does. For 5 days. So we want to get all of this information. And by the way, if you're the listing agent and you see solar, you should know all of these things and have that solar form completed prior to going to market. Because it's going to help you also. What if that solar is not transferable and therefore your seller would have to pay off the balance of what they owe in order to sell the property? Well, they might not be netting enough proceeds to actually want to sell anymore. So you need to know these things as a listing agent. So if you see solar and you're going to do seller disclosure package like a good listing agent before going to market, like I've taught you to, you should, even though it might not be required by the office, you should pull out this form solar. And very easy to remember because the acronym is solar. Okay.
You transfer and they transfer.
Most of them are transferable, but it's actually a recorded document. There may be fees involved. Everybody needs to know how much it costs. Like the buyer needs to know. How does this work? Otherwise, how can they agree to the purchase if they don't know the terms? All right, paragraph 12B3. Paragraph making review of seller's documents part of buyer investigation removed. Review of seller's documents is its own contingency in 8D. Okay, so I don't know, those of you who took the class with me for changes last January, but this is the part that has always confused me and it confuses a lot of agents the way it's written. Okay, so 12B3, paragraph making review of seller documents, part of buyer investigation removed. Fantastic. That was confusing. Review of seller documents is its own contingency. What does review of seller documents mean?
The TDF is
All the disclosures that the seller provides to us. I have a time frame as the buyer now to review them, sign them, and bring them back.
Was it 5 days always?
Isn't?
It said 17 in the fucking contract.
Yeah.
The way it was written, and I was getting that countered back all the time. And because I wasn't remembering to shorten that, because that's ridiculous. Why should the buyer have 17 days to review it and sign them and send it back? They shouldn't.
And we usually remove that one while we're removing the inspection contingency.
I mean, signing the seller disclosures and sending them back does not mean you're lifting any contingency. It simply means you sign them and send them back. It means you've received them. You're not agreeing to anything by the buyer's not agreeing to anything by signing the seller disclosures. They're simply verifying that they've received them and memorializing that by signing them, dating them, and sending them back. Also, guys, even when I'm in a difficult position where inspections aren't going well or there are delays during the investigation contingency, it's a feel good. I have my buyers sign those things because I have definitely reviewed them and reviewed them with my clients prior to doing inspections. Because if there's something on there that is of concern, I like to have our inspector take a look at that. So why not send it back? It's a feel good. It makes the seller feel like we're still moving forward. There's no reason to hold those until you lift everything. Sign them and send them back. All right. Paragraph 23, added language requiring parties to notify escrow of an assignment. Added language that a nominee will be treated the same as an assignee. Agent signature lines in real estate broker section includes, oh, sorry, this is separate. I don't know why this, okay. So paragraph 23, added language requiring parties to notify escrow of an assignment. Does anyone remember what an assignment is? buyer. So this is a very misconceived action in real estate. Because there are legal assignments and there are illegal assignments, and most assignments are illegal. Okay, because really, an assignment is, I make the offer in my name as an individual. However, I now want to make the purchase in the name of my trust. I am the only signer, the only member of authority of that trust. That's an assignment, okay? A nominee is someone else, and that's not illegal as long as everyone agrees to it. The whole legal weirdness about assignments in escrow is what is oftentimes, but not always, because these people are so shady, they're not legit. A lot of times they're not agents at all. They call themselves wholesalers, and we've talked about this. They go around tying up listings in escrow with no intention of ever purchasing the property themselves to sell their escrow to someone else. So they are making money off of nothing other than engaging in fraud and tying this poor, unknown, unsuspecting seller up under contract and then selling their escrow to someone else.
And they have an honesty to mass email it. I had that.
Yeah,
I done it myself.
Yeah, very illegal. You should report the shit out of anyone doing stuff like that. Because does the seller have a right to cancel? Not unless the buyer's not performing. And is it just absolute fraud if a buyer makes an offer on a property that they have no intention of purchasing?
Yes.
Yes. Because even if they cancel and all of that, has it hurt the seller?
Yes.
It has absolutely
Yeah.
hurt the seller. Okay. So,
And they were other country, the one I got, and they were from like Colombia or some other places, South America.
how do I?
That's
don't
nice.
do this shit at all.
It's like Holland.
Sorry, guys at home. The conference room TV keeps on losing connection to project what I have here. Yeah, just stay here or something. Here. All right. So this added language requiring parties to notify escrow of an assignment and adding language that a nominee will be treated the same as an assignee. Why? Well, because buyer and seller have to agree to a nominee. So if the seller agrees to it, why does anyone care? No one should care, right? If the seller agrees to it, no one should care. But I do want you to know that this is not to make those shady assholes committing fraud okay. It doesn't. It's simply because last year when they made the changes in the document, they treated the actual legal act of assignment like legitimate, like maybe I'm gonna get a better loan rate because I want to if I add my husband to the loan, and so now I want to add my husband or my boyfriend to the contract, or my dad, or now I want to purchase in my trust. They were treating that assignment as like too formally, like I was assigning it to some random person. So they've changed that, and they've also allowed a nominee, maybe one person who can, it's for several circumstances. Like I can have a trust where there are 5 parties, but 2 of them have authority to act on behalf of the trust with or without the signature of the other. So, right, maybe I write the offer and I'm one of those, authorities within the trust, but maybe I'm going to go out of the country. So now I want the other nominee from my same trust to take over. And so I'm going to send it to them. So there's a lot of reasons for this. The state stepped in, and because of the shadiness, they went a little overboard in the way they wrote the contract before. And now they're correcting it to work a little bit better for the legitimate reasons that you want to assign in escrow.
And is it legal if I just go in there and then, I figure out that, my, something happens to my finances and I can't afford as a buyer? that the property, so I just assign it to somebody else, like truthfully, not shady.
No, because if you can't purchase, you need to cancel. Because the seller needs a contract with the new buyer. Yeah. Let's see. Agent signature lines in real estate broker section includes address, email, and phone for each brokerage. Allows each broker to identify as a designated electronic delivery address, the email or phone number identified above or alternate by clicking the appropriate box. I'm not sure how many of you have actually written an RPA over the last year, but under the signature lines, all of our personal contact information, it's kind of disjointed now, right? Like, what do you put where? The address, the telephone number, the email. So I believe that they've made that a little simpler, and they have put it closer together actually in the lines. But let's take a look at the new RPA now that we've talked about the changes, right? These are really minor changes. These are clarification changes, not a big deal.
Let me print that out.
Hmm?
Let me print that out.
No, I can't print from this computer. Oh, stop share. No, I am not set up on printers on this computer. Sorry.
It's all right.
But you know, when we went in and did your RPA, you can print from there
And home.
or here if you're set up to the
I'm
printers.
signed up. They-
Have them set you up.
Okay.
Have Armand or Brittany or someone like that help you. Now we're. All right, so everyone at home can now see the document called Disclosure Regarding Real Estate Agency Relationship, yes? Okay, fantastic. So
This is and for lease and for sale.
it will accompany all contracts. There were no changes to any of the disclosures, so I'm not gonna review any of those today. If you'd like further explanation of those, you can take any one of my many RPA classes. Those have not changed, so they'll be the same on the recorded versions. Oh, also guys, just so you know, Justin Jacobson and I have spent a lot of time, we've redesigned the mentorship program entirely. We are absorbing Ignite. Ignite will no longer exist in this office. So instead of 6 or 7 classes that I teach regularly, I will be teaching you 16. I will sometimes be teaching you twice a week now, depending upon the course content. And Justin and I will go through them in sequential order over and over again with a 2-week break in between. Everyone within the mentorship program, and even posted in the office, will be receiving an email from me with the new course outlines. When I first came here 5 years ago, I was told not to modify the mentorship contracts or documents very much. Well, they sucked, they were poorly written. So I have since made them very cohesive, very clearly written with every single policy and procedure there. Course outlines with prerequisites, what you should bring to class, what you should know. Justin Jacobson the same. And so, like I said, within the next week or so, you'll all get an email of that. I will post copies of it outside of the training room door. It does not mean you have more requirements for courses and mentorship, because remember, you had 20 Ignite classes. You'll probably actually have less, and you'll have more extensive training in them between the 16 classes I'm doing, and that's, I think it's 8 that Justin's doing. All right, so it is everything but better. No more Ignite. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And if you ever have a question, there's going to be an answer in that manual for you. All right. So here we are. So for those of you who are newer and have not had the opportunity to take a residential purchase agreement class, this is going to be a little difficult for you because I'm not going to go through everything here today. Today was specifically to go over the RPA changes. Okay. I will be teaching RPA from now on, part 1 and part 2. But now that we've reviewed the changes, I have been telling those of you who are newer, a lot of people have joined since the first of the year. I've been telling you guys not to go back and look at the old RPA classes. Based on the minor nature of the changes, go ahead and look at those if you need that lesson sooner, because these changes are so minor and therefore a little bit more advanced stuff that you don't need to worry about in most transactions. And the changes are to make them clearer, not harder, understand. But we'll do a basic review of contract right now, okay? Top left-hand corner, date prepared. This is a legal reference date. This is the date that you write your contract. It is not the date of acceptance. It is not the date that the client has signed. Section 1A, buyer's names go here. Complete full names of every party, not John and Jane Smith. It would be John Smith and Jane Smith if it's a husband and wife, whatever it is. There can also be an entity name. Property address, we need to make sure we have a legal property address. You should know what a legal city is. Legal city is different than area. Areas are things like Brentwood, Hollywood, Venice. Those are all city of LA, and it should say city of LA in here. Also, assessor parcel number, most often referred to as APN, is the legal reference number. In the county of Los Angeles, it will be in this format. 4 digits, -3 digits, -3 digits. That needs to be there. That is actually more important than the property address, although both must be complete. Remember, this is a legal document. Everything must be completed. All right, so we're going to talk about the changes now. So how do I flip flop between documents? Well, I think it was
3G. 3.
say right now, 3E1 and 2. Okay, just easily like swap between the two. How do I even minimize this? Can anyone tell me escape? Huh? Escape? Nope. Ah, thank you.
Just command caps.
Huh?
You press command and then caps to change to commands and tab to change the tab.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Mhm.
Okay, so 3E1 and 2. 3E1 and 2. So that's the section in this section. Remember, that was about the points. Buyer to pay up to blank points to obtain the rate above. Do we care about this?
No.
No. Should we be completing this? No.
Good.
3E2. How about here? Well, 3E2 is when the buyer plans to purchase with both a first and second loan. Most buyers do not go into escrow believing they're going to have a first and second loan. Usually it's because there's been an issue with financing. It's gotten creative. So we will almost never use 3E2, but it's exactly the same thing. We don't care about points because that is not between us and the buyer. We are not the buyer's mortgage broker or lender. Okay?
Are you still going to fill it in?
No, you should never fill that in.
Really?
Yeah, I know what you're thinking of. What you're thinking of is this section, the not to exceed percentage. Yes, that should be completed, and you'll need to watch an RPA class to learn about that one. All right. Paragraph 3G. New optional paragraph for buyer to use to ask the seller to pay for the buyer's broker. All right, so in the instance that you were a dumb buyer's agent who did not ensure that the listing agent had a listing agreement with the seller and also failed to get a single party agreement signed prior to showing your buyer property, and then even stupider, you agreed to write an offer for them before you had such agreement. Hopefully you'll get lucky enough for someone to go ahead and sign an RPA that has this section completed where it says that the seller agrees to pay the obligation of buyer to compensate buyer's broker under a separate agreement. And you can use this CAR form. SPBB. Seller broker offer, if any, to compensate buyer's broker is unaffected unless otherwise agreed. So what does that mean? That means if there is a listing agreement and there is commission offered in that listing agreement, or if it's listed on the MLS, right? It doesn't have to be on the MLS to have a listing agreement, and the listing agreement does specify how much buyer's agent is to be paid. But if it's on the MLS, this blurb says that this is unaffected unless otherwise agreed. So if it's listed, if there's a listing agreement, you're fine. You don't need to use this section at all. All right. Paragraph 3M3 refers to units occupied by persons other than seller. Last column contains advisory to seller to add TOPA in a counter offer if tenant or other occupant and buyer did not check box to add the form. So what does that give someone? It is a reminder to a listing agent, basically, in the case that a buyer's agent failed to include this TOPA form, which you really need to have, and also failed to use, failed to include this TOPA form. It's an advisory there, so that hopefully the listing agent reads it, realizes they need the TOPA, and includes it in a counter offer. So let's take a look at that one, 3M3. Occupied units by tenants, it or anyone other than the seller. You check this box, par form TOPA, and look, here's what was changed. Seller shall disclose to buyer if occupied by tenants or persons other than the seller and attach TOPA in a counter offer, if not part of the buyer's offer. It is giving a tip off to dumbass agents when the buyer fucked up or the buyer's agent fucked up. So hopefully the listing agent doesn't follow suit and also fuck up. Although if neither one of them's reading it, I don't see how putting this in the right-hand column is gonna help. Good. What do I always say, guys? What do you need to do to get ahead in real estate? You need to read everything, read it twice. All right, paragraph 7A, new language provides that the unit buyer intends to occupy be vacant at time of possession. Buyer to identify which unit if more than one. So 7A. Occupancy. Seller shall disclose to buyer if occupied by tenants or persons other than seller and attach car form. Again, TOPA. But again, I don't know how the state thinks this is going to help people if they're not reading everything. Because my guess is if they didn't see it in the right-hand side column where there's check boxes and terms, they're probably not bothering to read this far down. All right, paragraph 9B2, window coverings include hardware and rods. Okay, so it's saying, it's clarifying to us what is included by default. But even if you know this by heart, does that matter? No, it does not. Because just because you know does not mean the other parties know. So you need to include everything that should possibly be included or questioned in section P here. Okay. Do not rely on other people's knowledge. Do not think that you know. And remember, even though we had changes to the RPA at the beginning of this year and they told us, do they change documents on us all the time with zero notice? The RPA could be changed next week and we won't know until you log in. And it might be such a minor change, like the change we're reviewing right now, where, you know, the date, like the month just changes here, right? Even if they change it tomorrow, it would have a RPA revised. But if they change it tomorrow and next week, it would say 122 here. So you